First of all, hi, fangirl. I have a question. Oh, how did you guys decide to go into doing audiobooks in the first place?
It beats waiting tables. We have a friend, Grover Gardner, who works with Blackstone Audio. And many, many years ago, decades ago, we all worked in theater together here in DC. And Grover at that time was working for the Library of Congress Talking Books program, which is a brilliant program. Millions of free audiobooks for anyone who is unable to read a print book. It is the best kept secret of government programs. Almost no one knows about it. And Michael and I have both recorded for it for decades. And it's an amazing program. So anyway, Grover suggested to me that I start working at the studio. And that fairly quickly led to his sending a demo to some commercial companies. And that's how I started working. And then Michael had a slightly different path.
Yeah, it was through Grover as well. When we first began recording books, the industry, we recorded on reel-to-reel machines. And you needed to have an engineer or a monitor as you were narrating to run the machine and back up and do all the corrections, and also to help stop you if you made a mistake and say you missed a word or whatever. And so Grover was working, my affiliation began with a different studio, and he needed a monitor, and I came down and monitored him, and there were 3 or 4 other narrators there. And so over the course of 3 years or so, I began being all 3 other monitors, or narrators, engineers as well. And we knew each other because we were actors. And then the head of the studio saw me in a play, and she said, "You need to be narrating." So she had me a demo out, and I sent it to 2 different companies. And it's kind of this history from there. The acting has always kind of complemented the narration work. It's very much the same. It's storytelling, it's voice work, it's all of that. The accents I've worked on as a narrator, and then the accents I've worked on as a stage actor have kind of complemented all of that. It's a great, it's a great way of working on your craft on a daily basis. And I found that I really love to tell stories that other people have written.
When we first started out working for commercial companies, we would go over to Grover's house. He lives quite close by. And we would go over to his house, and he had put 3 booths in his house. So he had a booth in a back bedroom, a booth in a middle bedroom, and a booth in the basement. And we would record in one of those booths because he had, the equipment and stuff. And we had to work with an engineer because we were working with ADAT tape.
DAT first.
DAT first and then ADAT,
Yeah.
Which, if you don't know, ADAT recording machines use VHS tape that you format into 8 tracks. And you go over the tape again and again and again and again to record your 8 tracks. And if you're 2 minutes from the end of the very last track on the tape, and the machine eats your tape, no backup, no, start at the top and read.
Yeah.
And then eventually we moved to a different house that had a basement that had a space for a booth. So we put a booth in the house we live in now and started recording. I need to ask, are there 2 microphones on? Because we are hearing like echo noises, and I'm wondering if there's something here.
Yes, there are 2 mics.
Yeah, just it's handled. Yeah, I mean, if you can kind of imagine a time when there was no internet.
They can't.
Okay, when
They're way too young.
Okay, when your phone had to be connected by a wire to somewhere long distance was hugely expensive. CDs had not been invented yet. Thing as a cell phone, it was a car phone, and it was about the size of. It looked like that, and you would plug it into a.
They can't see your head.
It was about. I can still remember sitting in the ballpark. Somebody was thrilled that they could take their charged car phone out of their car, sit in the ballpark, and say, "Guess where I'm calling from?" Baseball stadium. So technology has changed a whole lot. I mean, it used to be we would make a master, then we would have to put the master onto cassettes, ship all of that physically out to, in the two companies we mainly worked for in the beginning, where one was in Oregon and one was in California. And then they would duplicate everything. And then if you wanted to order, you would, either you had to mail in an order, you might be able to call in an order. They would have to then package it and ship it to you. It would take 3 to 5 days to get to you. And God forbid that your car cassette player would chew up a cassette, because then you were stuck and I can't, nothing. And you were limited in terms of, I think, because the boxes that held the cassettes could only go up to 20. So, and each cassette was only
45 minutes each
45 minutes a side. So once you got to 20, what is that? Once you got to 30 hours, you needed to have a part 2. So,
it all sounds so archaic.
Yeah.
When we started out, so I think we started pretty much in the late 80s.
Yeah.
It was a side gig. I had waited tables for a decade, and it was a gradual, am I earning enough from doing audiobooks to be able to quit my restaurant job? And then we were both doing a lot of theater as well. And so it was a really gradual transition. What would you say was the first year we made most of our income from audiobooks?
Probably around
10 years ago or so?
No, it was longer than
15.
It was longer, about 15, right around 2000.
And the booth in our basement, and we had 2 kids, right? So the booth in our basement was a homemade booth. We actually, we had a contractor who was doing some renovations on the house when we bought it. And we said, we need you to build a box in the basement. And none of the walls can be parallel. Can you do that? He said, yeah, I'll just give the workers a bottle of Jack and tell them to build a box. When we were recording in that booth, the kids could not move anywhere around the house. Even if the stairs behind us that lead up to the next floor, they couldn't even walk up those stairs. Any loud, and one of our kids, Henry Kramer, who's actually getting into audiobooks himself, his nickname was Little Stomping Buffalo. So we had trained our kids to be like, I'm recording!
I think also one of the reasons...
It scarred them.
Yeah. One of the reasons we, I think, were initially assigned this series was because we were in the same studio, and because at that point you couldn't physically, like in a computer, you can create a WAV file, email it to somebody, they can paste it in. It was all being done in linear, on tape, and they weren't splicing it. So they needed somebody who could go back and forth. And so oftentimes, especially in the later books, where 2 pages, it's me, 3 pages, it's her, 1 page, it's me, 5 pages, it's her, 10, we would literally be standing outside of the booth as the other one, hurry up, and because that was the only way we could get the thing together.
Yeah. And then we did another renovation and created a real studio. So we have a room in the basement. We dug down about 18 inches to get a high enough ceiling for we have vocal booths, which is like a whisper room, but it's like a booth that arrives and you assemble it. And there's one for him and one for me. And that's our current setup. So we're very happy with that.
Next question.
All right. Which one am I asking?
Just ask.
Just there? Okay,
Yeah.
sweet. That answered a lot of my questions. Yeah, I guess with the technology change from when you guys recorded Eye of the World to, say, Oathbringer, how much quicker is it to record an audiobook now versus then? And how much
It's
a lot.
No, I mean the process is usually whatever the length of the book is. It will take you between 2 and 3 times that length of the work done in the booth to come up with the finished recording. But everything about the production of it, like if you're on tape and you somehow miss a paragraph and you don't realize that until the end of the chapter, you have to go back and you have to re-record and you have to speed everything up to fit that paragraph in or redo everything from that mistake. Now, you miss a paragraph, you just insert space, record the paragraph, done. So in that sense, it really is like going from horse and buggy to rocket fuel.
I mean, and it's more on the production side, not on our side that it's speeded up, because whereas before you would create the track, then you would have to duplicate it onto a cassette and then ship that. So you're talking a day or 2 days to ship it. Then they would have to process everything.
And
now,
it's really expensive to
click,
produce CDs.
click, and they have 90 minutes, however much material you want to send. They have that in their hands. Just like you can get on your phone and go, oh, I'm listening to a sample chat. That sounds interesting. Click, 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 bang, and it's there.
Yeah.
So that's what's sped up. What has also changed when the industry started, because it was so new and it was like, are people really going to do this? I would literally have a shelf, and they would companies would send you a box full of books, print books that had already, that had been out there, and say, okay, we want this one first, then that one, then that one. If it was a new book, a new book would come into audio 3 to 6 months after it was actually published. And then the transition became, no, we want to release the book at the same time that the print book comes out. So then we started getting galleys, like the second pass, say, that an author had that hadn't been corrected necessarily. And you would get these literally stacks of paper. At the end of each year, we had a 4-drawer file, and there would be a stack of paper as tall as that file from all the galleys that we would get. And that's when the industry started to change a whole lot in terms of, because the publisher wasn't getting the print edition until weeks before they were going to publish, all of a sudden, instead of having months to do a book, they need it in 10 days, they need it in 2 weeks, they need it in 3 weeks. So some of the pressure that happens is due to the fact that they are releasing print books and audiobooks at the same time. And because the print book is still being edited, we can't say the words until you have the words in front of us. So that becomes the challenge. That's been a major production change. We have gotten better at it, and you do something every day, and you get better at it. But it's still pretty much, you read the book, and then 2 to 3 hours spent in the studio for every finished hour that you achieve. Sometimes more, if it's not a good fit with you syntactically. So.
And then the other really big sort of technical shift was we went from galley pages to PDFs that were emailed to us, and that we have a program, we use Goodreader on our iPads. And so now there's no more stacks of paper. It's just we use these PDFs that we can read on our iPads, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
No more trees.
Yep. Just
Nice.
Yeah, they had me scan those pages from Eye of the World and send it to them so that they would have it. So.
So I think there was a lot of moist eyes in the room as we were listening to you read. And I'd love to know if there was any part which you found emotional when you were reading it, or something that was difficult, or alternatively just your favorite bit. I mean, there's 13 books to pull from.
As an actor and as a narrator, you have to find a way to fall in love with whatever you're doing. Whatever character you're playing, whatever book you're reading, you have to find a way to love it. That's your job. That's the work. Sometimes that's an easy thing to do. I mean, because it's like, oh my God, I love this book. I love this book. This was really hard. And so, and also realize that every author, that book is their baby.
Yeah.
And
don't kill the baby.
Right. And the responsibility you feel as a narrator, and I know that we share this feeling. There was a time when they used to do multiple versions, like there might be 3 or 4 versions, different narrators would do the same work. Now it's pretty much one narrator or one narration group per book. And so that is the only way that book is going to get to some people. And the object was, the object, and we learned this a bit at the Library of Congress, you are trying to be as invisible as possible. Because you want everybody to hear the story, not Michael Kramer, not Kate Redding. You want them to hear the story. And so oftentimes it's like, when you're choosing character voices, it's like, does the book really merit that strong a character choice, or is it more plot driven? People don't care, it's like, if you call too much attention to a character voice, it's like, why? If that's not warranted. Now, there are other books where it's like, yes, it's demanded. He or she has given you, a description of this character. So there are books that, I got to do Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and that was my Bible going through college. 18 years after I read it, I got to do it. And it was also after the birth of my son. And it was this amazing journey for me to be able to do that.
He is notorious for breaking down in tears in the booth.
Yeah. But, part of it too is this genre in particular, I think, tries to tackle some really huge issues.
Say it.
And you have to go there.
Yeah.
You have to go there. It's not fair. And even though you may not understand it the way the author understands it, these are big things that people are encountering and dealing with. And even though in this story it's a Dark Lord or whatever, for them, that becomes a symbol for something completely different and something they deal with every day of their lives and fight with every day of their lives and feel the pain of every day of their lives. So to go to that place is almost incumbent on you as a narrator.
What are the bits that make you cry?
There's tons of things. If you remember Oathbringer, when
He doesn't remember Oathbringer.
I do remember Oathbringer, but when was it? What's his name? D starts with a D. Well, who?
Dalinar.
Yeah, when he is being stripped of his pain, that moment of confronting his addiction, and what it meant to him, and that's a huge one. But I mean, it happens all the time. A parent looking at a child looking at a parent. There are any number of times, if you really are paying attention to what the story is doing, it moves you. And, so it's easy to go there in that regard. I don't think that, to me, is not doesn't qualify you to, that's doing your work,
For my part, I'm someone who always accessed anger growing up. That was the thing that would protect me and save me. And I had a lot of things to be very angry about. I also put myself in a lot of very risky situations, and anger often got me out of them. And so the anger in a book is like second skin. I know anger. I'm not afraid to be angry. I understand the dimensions of anger. The thing that kills me, and I think you saw it when I read Maureen's speech, is, and I will use the phrase, rise to the occasion. There's something, I'm crying now. There's something so powerful about rising to the occasion and fighting for the force of good. And the fantasy genre and Wheel of Time in particular, so finely calibrated. They understand the power of that feeling. That you can feel alone and you can feel hopeless and you can feel like the world is shit and there's nothing I can do about it and I may as well just remove myself. And then someone like Moraine or Henry V, through history, there have been these leaders who show up and go, we can do this. We can protect our land. We can create the world we want to live in. Let's all pull together. That is probably the thing that most slays me. That's probably the most often when I have like tears running, is in those moments where it's like, come on!
Donald E. West, I love humor. And Donald E. Westlake, I got to do a whole bunch of it, and a lot of it is now gone. They've reissued it under, I think they lost the copyright to it, so they had to re-record it. But there's still one out there, and it's my absolute favorite, which is Bad News. Just because the characters are so clear, they're so much fun. Oh my God. There are sentences in that book that took 15 minutes to do because I couldn't get through them. I was laughing. The thing, it's like to try to find as much humor, and you saw it here in the opening paragraph, because when a series is 400 and some hours long, it can't just be one thing. He's got everything in here, and we embrace that because, my God, it makes all of the other things stand out even more.
It's my turn.
Yes, it's your turn.
Hello. It's in.
Step forward a little bit more.
Sorry. Honor to speak to both of you. I am one of those people you mentioned in the previous answer. I'm blind, fan of the series, and so my only exposure to Wheel of Time has been through the audiobooks and your narration. And just basically going back to the question you just answered, I was curious, when you work together, when you collaborate, how do you come up with the characterization? Because they seem similar between both of you when the characters come up in different point of views. They seem similar. How do you collaborate with each other? Did the author give you input on the characterization or pronunciations or things?
We started recording the series over 25 years ago. And at the very beginning, we got almost no direction. We were basically told, read the books, make the decisions, you're good to go. And when it comes to the characterization, what's interesting is that I think that Michael and I respond in a very similar way to the writing. And so I would have a character, and then I would go check. Do you have that character already? What does he sound like? And Michael would tell me, oh, yeah, I did have him, and this is the voice I gave him. And I'm like, good, they're really similar. So a lot of it is really based on, is it in the writing? Is it in the description? Is it in the way the character speaks? Is it there? And then do we have the sort of good fortune to both respond in the same way? And then there were some voices that I will never forget Michael coming up into the kitchen from the basement saying, oh, I have a new character. His name is Loyal, and he sounds like this. That is like so cruel. There is no way I can do that voice. And I have not only him, but I have his mother too. But for the most part, and there are like plenty of mistakes that were made along the way in terms of pronunciations. I think it's only understandable for a series that large that there would be things that slip through the cracks. And for the most part, we sort of part is instinctive, and then part was strategic. We have a binder, loose leaf binder, about 2 inches thick, with the thousands of names and the way we pronounce them.
That was one of the first things. If you look at the Eye of the World, there's a little glossary in the back. And it has maybe 50, 60 terms, names, whatever in it. And rapidly, about chapter 4, I was running into names that were not in the book. And again, as I said, we started in the age when the phone had to be connected to the wall. And it was hugely expensive. And we didn't have email. We didn't have texts where we could say, how do you want it, like we do now? And the one phone call we made to Robert Jordan saying, how do you want us to go forward with this? Because he'd been given the first, I think, 5 books of the series, which were 5,000 pages or something like that. And I'm on page like 90, and I'm going, I've got 25 words already, and that doesn't even begin to touch anything. And he said, just trust yourself, and basically gave us carte blanche in terms of how to pronounce names. We basically tried to use the phoneticism that he had in the glossary in terms of our approach, in terms of a new character, new name, no reference to it. And yes, there were several characters that are named that we didn't get right, but partly because it's like, well, they're not listed separately, so we didn't even know that they existed. But that was the last phone call we had from him. And from what I understand, when he was, as he was writing the succeeding books, he would listen to the audio book to basically, I think, put the story back into his mind in terms of where he wanted to go. Speaking of which, little promo, there is a lost, and I'm going to say lost, Robert Jordan book called The Warrior of the Altai, which is being released, I believe, October either 8th or 20th. It's really, really good. You can't. This get published, and It's not part of the Wheel of Time, but you can see all of the kind of stuff that he does, and it's typical Robert Jordan. He's really, you feel like you're encountering. This is his first, I think, a first novel, so you're encountering him, and you feel like, oh my God, he's at the height of his power. He's just starting. So, just to put that out there, that it's there, and if you're looking for another kind of Robert Jordan fix, this will be a little bit different, but it's good.
Can I also ask you, do you use the Library of Congress Talking Books program?
I am from Canada, but I use something similar from there.
And there's no correlation between the two countries' systems.
I have borrowed books that come from America, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome.
I've heard your narration on things other than Wheel of Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for coming. So I'm going to be the person that asks this question. I'm not going to ask you about the TV show and if you're involved, but if you had a fantasy involvement in the TV show, like a character or just any part of involvement, what would you want to do with a TV show?
Oh my God, that would... I think I would want to be Varen.
We love her so much. She's one of our universally favorite characters.
She's great. And I'm an obsessive researcher, so it wouldn't be a stretch.
So you're definitely a brown Aja then.
Probably Tom Marilyn.
He's a goofball.
Yeah, and/or
How do you look at a mustache?
very, well,
Can
I
you
would
juggle?
love to do like Loyal's, the voice of Loyal, just because that would be so much fun. I mean, I loved Loyal's character. I remember when I encountered that. Okay, new character, and this is his voice. Wow. And he has a 3-page monologue, so this is not something you can just kind of, oh my God. But the other character I really like is Basil Gill, so,
Yes! Gentleman and a scholar, Basil Gill.
Great, thank you.
What about you?
Yeah.
Me, I'm a tall, blue-eyed redhead, so I would definitely play an Aiel. Any Aiel would do. I dressed up as a wise one last night, and I actually did a birthing ceremony.